Hey, Mike, how are you?
Hey, Annette. I probably can't stay long, but it's been so long since I talked to you. I wanted to wish you a happy new year.
Happy New Year. Hey, Mike, I just want to introduce you to my buddies here, Tom Powner, and who's a resume writer and also a recruiter, and my good friend Dawn Rasmussen, who I've known forever, who's also another resume writer, LinkedIn profile writer, colleague of mine. And guys, this is Mike, and Mike is smart and awesome, and I hardly ever see him because he's on the West Coast and he just doesn't come online in the mornings. So, um, we're here today to talk about successful 2022 job search. And Mary, my recruiter friend, who I think many of you know from who lives in Hawaii, is going to be joining us shortly. So, what are you thinking? One of the things that I've seen and I've been reading about is the idea of there being an ongoing of remote and hybrid working, um, going forward, because people have had a taste of that flexibility and how awesome that is, what a positive impact it's had. And and employers are finding it difficult to find people for jobs. There are tons of candidates out there, but there just aren't a lot of the right people for the jobs. So one of the things that I'm thinking is, for 2022, people are going to have to be job searching a little differently to get in on this remote market. So, hi Mary, welcome to the stage. Thanks for being here. So, what? Let's just kind of go popcorn style. So, who wants to start and give some thoughts on that? Successfully finding those, work in this remote hybrid workspace that we're in now. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, first, I think people need to be really careful to make sure the remote, if that's their main target and they really want remote work, that the jobs they connect to will be remote once COVID is more under control. I've had 4 clients in the past 2 months that were promised remote work, and now the company is shifting to hybrid, or they're going to be making them come back to work in the office, and they already communicated that. So what they were promised 8 months ago is not what's happening now. Now this new variant has put them back into really remote, but I don't think it's going to be as massive as we think it is once COVID is more under control. I think companies really want people back in office for the most part. That was just my overview based on what I'm seeing over the past couple of months.
Sorry, I couldn't find my mic. That's really interesting to me, and I'm curious to hear other thoughts. I just read that JobVite Recruiter Nation that came out, I don't know, a few months ago, and the recruiter survey there said that 70% of employers were going to be continuing hybrid, and or remote. So what are your thoughts on that, Tom? And who would Mike? I saw you on Mike also. So Tom, do you want to share something, and then we'll pass the mic to Mike?
Well, I think companies are reacting to what's going on now. Once things level off, if people, like I said, that remote, I think that opportunity is going to still be out there. I think COVID has really shown that we can work remote, but productivity, collaboration, depending on what you do for a living. And let's face it, there's a lot of people that just can't work remotely. So whether it's going to be a hybrid, I don't think the total work from home jobs are going to be out there as massive as they are right now. That's the only thing I'm saying. Just be careful, really dig in and just make sure the company is really dedicated to a remote work environment. And is that really healthy for your career? Maybe a hybrid would be more, more healthy for your career. Being around your boss seeing you work, doing the client facing. There's only so much, passion you get across on a Zoom call. So I'm just saying, be aware of what's going to happen a year from now.
Great. No, that is great advice. So Mike, you had on Mike before. What say you?
Yeah, Annette, one of the things that stood out to me about what you said was, and I think we need to pay really close attention on, is like we think everyone is capable of going remote, and I want job searchers and I want people to get what they want, and to assume that everybody's going to get that and that's going to be easy just isn't really feasible. So, one of the words you used is hybrid. And so you'll notice a lot of companies will say, oh, well, 70% or 100% of things are going to be hybrid and remote. Well, hybrid could mean remote once a week or remote twice a week. And if you're hybrid, well, you're going to have to go into the office sometime. And so companies are sort of hedging their bets and saying, hey, we realize you want to be remote right now, but let's not assume that they're promising us that this is going to be a long-term thing. Now, do I think as many companies and employers as possible should attempt to be 100% remote? Yeah, I think they're going to have advantages with the talent market if they do that. Um, but also there's a lot of employees that have proven that they're not effective working from home. I mean, if you go on TikTok and get on the part of TikTok where people are talking about work and whatever, there are employees that are openly talking about how they're taking 2-hour breaks during the day, like multiple nap breaks during the day. Um, so, so from a job searcher's perspective, if you want that, you need to become a really great communicator. You need to have an awesome resume. You need to become one of the best interviewers in the world. So I know I threw a lot of things out there, but I think it's a much more complex topic than people realize.
No, no, I agree. I agree. John, I see you on mic. Go. What would you like to add to that?
I think, well, I've been virtual pretty much since I started my business, with the exception of first couple of years. But I think, to Mike's point, I mean, not in just kind of on the flip side, not everybody's cut out to do remote work either. You may like the idea, but to be honest, it is pretty isolating, and some people have culture shock in that respect. And then also, they may not have the discipline either. I mean, it does take a lot of focus. And, I struggled through the early years of running my business, is that you get a lot of distractions in a home environment, even though I had my own separate office area. Stuff needed to be done, and like I need to clean the house or do the laundry or whatever, and it's just like it's sort of right there, and you can't quite escape that. And of course, you've got pets and other family members and whatnot, but the discipline part is really important. So if you're a job seeker and you're seeking remote work, you have to be able to demonstrate that you know how to manage your time, you know how to be disciplined, you can still be productive. Kind of also interestingly enough, I've talked to a number of companies that they have actually decided to go all virtual, do remote work, simply because they're cutting the overhead cost of the office space. And they have a younger workforce that's much more interested in that kind of structure. So the company's actually saving a lot of money by not having to rent office space, or they just disperse all the employees. Now, there's a whole question about culture, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But anyway, it's just some interesting observations I've seen.
Yeah, I love what you said about not everyone's cut out for it. I mean, I am myself, a symptom. I have very high shiny object syndrome where I'm, excuse me, can be easily distracted. But everybody doesn't like it. I mean, I love working from home. My husband has his own business and works from our home, and he hates it. He likes to get out and go to his clients' offices as often as he can. I just before I welcome George to the stage, Mary, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. I think I share a lot of the same thoughts that everyone has said already. I kind of see it a little differently, though. I mean, I work primarily in like consulting and tech, and clients that I've worked with, they've made the decision to fully go remote. Um, I mean, most of their competitors are doing the same thing. When I hear the word hybrid, I think there is an element of that, but for the most part, the companies I'm working with, they are, in working from home most of the time, then once a quarter, having to go into an office for like a meeting or something. But I think it's really important that if you are interested in work from home positions, and I'm just sharing from my own experience and the fields that I work with with consulting and tech, but a lot of places are posting positions that have multiple locations available, and people apply. You definitely want to, as a job seeker, ask and confirm, like, what is the setup for this role? I see that you have a million locations, or it's all over the US. What is my day-to-day work situation set up? Am I ever going to be called into an office or required to travel or something? But I think I agree with everyone. It is, of course, dependent upon the industries that they're working with. But yeah, I think I would agree with what most people have said already.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of hearing everywhere. George, thank you for joining us. Did you have a question or something that you'd like to add to our conversation?
No, as a matter of fact, I appreciate, thank you very much for letting me get on here. Actually, I just wrote a book about a year ago about career transition. And I think the panel has really outlined it very well. You have to specifically, being the person that's interviewing, really understand currently what you want, define that in a process that's very simple. I outline it in the book. But more importantly, really doing a lot of the investigation in the interviewing process to find out what does remote mean, because remote means anything to a lot of people differently. It could be 10% remote, it could be 100% remote, it could be as needed. And what does that mean? Does that mean once a quarter? So I think the panel has really done a great job of identifying two potential people that are out there interviewing a great need as to defining what you want versus the employer, because you might get into a job thinking all the great things. And I've had actually experienced this in both on one side as well as another, being in a company where I've hired a great employee and their expectation was totally off from what our expectation of remote was, and they left us.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. It's something that I talk about, write about all the time, and I think others do. Other people on the stage here do as well. Where you know candidates make the mistake and of not really interviewing the employer as well as the employer is interviewing them. They go into, they have the mindset. I mean, I was like this myself. If I go in and I wanted the job, and I would be selling myself to the employer and not as concerned about whether or not they were really this great fit for me, and I was not asking the right questions. And those ended up being the worst jobs that I ever had. I'm wondering, is it something? I mean, Tom, you're in recruiting, and Mary, you are as well. Is that something that you can get in the offer? As far as being remote, permanently.
Well, the recruiting I do recruiting for sales, um, business operations managers, and field human resources managers. So none of these positions I recruit for are remote. They're 100% customer facing in the supply centers, in the warehouses. So what I recruit for is not remote. That being said, I don't know if a company would guarantee you 100% remote for the whole time you're with them. So that's something you could get somewhat outlined. I don't think that they're going to agree to 100%. And again, there are some industries, a lot of IT positions that always been remote. So if a position was remote pre-COVID, well, I'm pretty sure it can be remote going forward. Positions that transitioned to remote during COVID, I think might be up in the air a little bit.
Yeah, the reason I was asking is I have a good friend of mine who actually works for Gartner and started. in the office, and then actually the boss that she had allowed people to just work remotely, and it was just kind of an informal remote situation. And she actually moved because of this situation, further away from the office, so much further it did not make commuting on a daily basis really feasible. And so when she got a new boss, she had to go in, excuse me, and negotiate that. So I was just wondering if that's something that, that could be, as part of the, negotiation during the offer stage. So, any other thoughts on that before I pass the mic over to Ken?
Annette, yeah, I just wanted to comment on that. I mean, absolutely. I think that, especially in these times of COVID, when people's roles have been made remote in part, and now employers are asking them to come back into the office, definitely you have to get your ducks in a row before you make any major change. And I think like moving any distance is kind of part of that. I think, if you enjoy where you work and you enjoy that relationship with the employer, you want to get ready for it and be proactive and actually get it documented, get it, talk about it. I think, I've heard stories, not so much that it's with any clients that I'm working with, but I've heard stories of people that, when they're in negotiation with companies of roles, and maybe they're not getting exactly what they want in salary or in benefits or something, that is something that they'll ask for, to have it in writing that if the role can be hybrid, if it can't be fully remote. But that is something that the employee or candidate should be doing proactively.
Great, great. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective. Ken, thanks for joining us on the stage. I know Ken, I invited him up to join us. Do you have any thoughts you'd like to share on this, or a question to pose?
Sorry about that. I couldn't find my microphone.
No worries.
Um, I I do agree with pretty much everything everyone said, especially in that when you talked about it being a mutual interview that the candidate needs to find out. One of the things when I coach my clients from a
Ken, you're going in and
okay, I'm sorry. I don't want to.
that.
I don't want to ruin your program here.
No, no, it's fine. It's just if you can go to a place where you're not as in and out, that'd be
Okay,
great.
if you can hear me now, I won't
Yep.
move. I have
Okay, cool.
my left arm pointed north, my right leg pointed south. I'm good. I got you good.
Okay, I guess we lost him. So while we wait for so Ken, are you back again, or okay? All right. Well, let's turn to what Dawn had brought up, the idea of corporate culture. When you're, when you're having that job search, and as I mentioned, I have been guilty of this a couple of times, where I took a job, I was so excited, I got bad vibes, but I took the job anyway. And it was a huge mistake for me. One of them, I ended up just quitting, without notice, which is a terrible thing to do, but I chalk it up to being younger, much younger at the time. So what are you thinking, Dawn, in terms of corporate culture, when you're wanting to have that successful job search? How do you, figure out if the culture is a good fit for you?
Well, I think the best place to get culture cues is from people that you may know at the company already. So you want those internal referrals that they can give you the inside scoop on things. So the more you can learn about that, you could also be sort of a passive observer too. If there's a particular position you're interested in, and if it keeps coming up and being recruited for, and the position keeps coming open, that kind of means there's an open door. The environment might not be that great either. So you just have to do a lot of Q watching and using your internal connections to really give you some feedback on what the company's about. Also, just paying attention to the news. Even I mean, I had one client that was associated, had worked at a company that had was very much in the major news story, and even though the person had nothing to do with what the executive did, it made the whole company look bad. So they feel like they have besmirched reputation simply because they were associated with that company. So, knowing what's out there, the company's reputation on top of that too is another cue for you to look at. This is Donna Nunn speaking.
Go ahead, Tom.
Well, just to piggyback what Dawn was saying, you want to look at the retention of employees. So LinkedIn has is so massive right now. When you have the paid account, you can see the retention of employees. So I was working with a client yesterday, and they had this target list. One company, the retention there was like 19 months. The other company really wanted to get into. He said it was a great company, and when you look at the retention, it was I think 2,600 people at the company. Retention rate was 8.4 years. So when a company has a high retention rate, that typically means a few things. The pay could be good, the culture could be great. It's just a nice place to work. So sometimes how long people stay with a company could be a sign of a good culture.
So where do you find that on LinkedIn? I wasn't aware of that.
Oh, sure. Whenever you look at a job posting and you look at the company information, you scroll down, it's going to probably be toward the bottom. It's going to have a range of company growth as far as new employees over the past 10 years, retention rate. So again, if a company has a really quick retention rate, you're going to figure, well, people aren't happy there. And then you go to Glassdoor and you see all these negative comments. So then you can understand there's a synergy of maybe a bad culture, and vice versa on the opposite side.
Great. Thank you so much. So we have a couple people in the audience. Please do feel free to come up and, if you have a question or something you'd like to share, if you have had some, something that you've done that's made you particularly successful in your job search, please come up and share it with us. So when you're, the whole thing about the successful job search, and there's been a lot of talk over the last, I don't know, maybe 6 months, maybe longer than that. I know we've talked about it here as well. And I think Dawn and Mary, you've both been part of the discussions. The idea of it being a candidates market, and people think, oh, it's a candidates market. It's a candidates market. It's going to be easy for me to find another job, and people are quitting. I just heard something on the news. They were saying a story that more people switched jobs in November than had yet so far during this whole quote great resignation. So what are your thoughts on that? What do candidates do to stand out? I mean, is this in fact jobs are easy? Who wants to jump in? Just flash your mics and we'll just go popcorn. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, I'll jump in. Yeah, it is a candidate market, but by no means at all does that mean the job market is less competitive. It's actually more competitive. This year, the past 12 months, we received 25% more resumes than we did in the past 4 years. So because it's a candidate market, people that are still working that kind of, didn't have the balls to look for a job and now feel empowered and they're looking for jobs. So people are resigning without a job and looking. People are getting back into the job market right now. And we have a slew of people that have been at companies for 10 plus years that want to make a change. So we all looking, so we have more people looking at these jobs. So it's been extremely competitive. So the resume to LinkedIn is even more valuable now than it ever has been.
Yeah, I've heard that as well, that it's really something where, and I found this myself, where people who have been hunkered down and waiting during the height of the pandemic are now coming out and they're becoming active job seekers. So Ken, I saw you flash your mic. What would you like to jump in and say?
Hopefully, I'll be more successful this time in that. But I think it's what's really important. What I talk to my clients about is when you're resume, LinkedIn, and interviewing, you need to communicate your ability to take initiative, for example, that you're not waiting for someone to tell you what to do. I think you need to be able to demonstrate leadership through examples that you give so that the interviewer, the hiring manager, can feel comfortable that, okay, this person is going to get things done without me looking over their shoulder, without them being right next to me. So I do think it's important to have good, clear examples like that to make yourself a good candidate. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So Mary, what are your thoughts? Because you're in the recruiter. What how do candidates stand out to you? I mean, is there something beyond showing achievements or that results, etc.? Is there anything in particular that you look for?
Oh gosh. I mean, I think what a number of the other speakers have said is true. I mean, having a really strong resume, very important, and a strong LinkedIn profile. But I think also being able to speak to it with ease and without sounding like rehearsed. But I mean, it's that bar that I think Tom alluded to. Like, yes, it's a candidate's market, but it's still really crazy competitive. And the ones that are selected, they can ask for all sorts of things. So I would think that, I know for me, when I'm looking at candidates, it's always not that they're just qualified. It's just like, how impressive, is their background? Like, what have they done? What have they let? Is it apparent that their experiences on paper or in their profile kind of lead to the story and journey that they're on professionally? And that, I mean, I always like to think, like, gosh, have all these experiences led them to what they're applying to now, with confidence? If it does, I mean, that's someone I really do want to speak with, and make a point to. But I mean, that's, for me, that's what I look for. And really am impressed by. Yeah.
So are you talking about just having sort of a um, cohesive story where someone is just showing progression in the same career?
Not necessarily. I mean, that's an obvious example for sure. But people, diversity, just in general, like, there are many ways to that road of success. So that, like, yeah, I mean, I think if it's clearly articulated, people's experiences, be it like out of industry, and they're trying to transition into something new, if they have certain core skills or accomplishments that could really do well in a new field or something completely different for a person, I'm looking for that. But I think it's not just a narrow path of just being promoted and here's a title and an elevation that in days past we have seen. It's just, we're seeing that people's content and the experience that they're having can come from different ways. And if that's articulated clearly enough and well enough, I think, at least for me, I look for that. I kind of have a reputation, though, of not really looking for people who are traditional. I will say that. A lot of times I'm asked by hiring managers to please explain what I see in people. But like, for me, it's just so much more to the story than just one trajectory.
Well, that is very refreshing to hear. I'm so glad to hear that. I just want to mention, we are up here talking about, having a successful job search this year. If you're in the audience and you would like to come up and ask a question, if you're looking for a job right now and you might want to pick up some advice, we have some really smart recruiters, coaches, resume writers up here. And so please do feel free to come up and join us on the stage and pose your question. George, were you applauding or did you flash your mic to speak?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've been talking is, for my book for a year ago, is that it was about my career transitions in a pre and a post pandemic. And each particular time following a process, and this is what I find a lot of times people who are struggling in career transition is they just don't have a process, right? And so one of the things that I tell people, there's three things that every couple of weeks you should be evaluating. First, energy, enthusiasm, and positive attitude. I think people talked about it on the stage here, roundabout way, but you really have to come off with energy, enthusiasm, positive attitude, especially I find the people that are struggling, who are long in career transition, really get down on themselves. Excuse me. And it comes through in the interviewing process or the networking meeting. The second thing is your scheduled day. What does your day look like? You know, you left a structured life. You got up at a certain time, you went to the office, you had certain KPIs, certain meetings. All that's gone if you haven't developed that structure. Even though each day may feel like a month, before you know it, 3 months go by and you really have very little to show for it. So what do you do? Get up in the morning? What do you do during the day? What do you do weekly, and monthly, in order to move your job search forward? And then the third and final thing I tell people is, if you haven't realized already, you are the CEO of You Incorporated. And just like a CEO, you should have a personal board of advisors. These are 3 to 5 people that, they're not all thinking like you. So if you're an operations guy like me, you're not going to have all operations guys say, you're doing all the right things, and never get there. But you want somebody that's going to be collaborative, that's going to help listen, because again, you can't offload all that negative energy onto your spouse, significant other, or an interview or network, because you come off, not as the best candidate. But then you also need people that are going to hold you accountable and say, you know what, George, you need to stop the pity party and get on board and start getting headed in the right direction. And that's George Murray, and I'm done talking.
Yeah, that's some great advice. Tom, did you want to jump in? Because I want to bop over to Dawn. I want to ask her a question next. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, just to piggyback one of the things George said, it starts with your voicemail. It starts with the way you answer the phone. That energy has to be there. I'm a recruiter. The first time I'm hearing somebody give me a voicemail message, and 20% of the voicemails are filled, which makes no friggin' sense to me. And then when they do leave their outgoing voicemail message, is so depressing. Why would I even want to speak to them? And then if I do get them on the phone, I'm calling them and they answer the phone, and it feels like I just woke them up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So the energy level has to be there all the time. So I just wanted to reiterate that point because I think it's very important. I'm out.
Absolutely. So, Dawn, what advice are you giving your clients right now in terms of this whole, candidate market, how to stand out?
Well, I think it really is centered around understanding the value that you bring to the table. And so you want to think about how you're adding value to your existing or past employers, or have added value, how you've made improvements, moved the needle. And, in some cases in the business sector, not the nonprofit sector, but how have you been a profit center versus a cost center? So, people perk up, potential employers perk up whenever they hear someone who's very confidently relating about how they helped a company. And it's not boasting, as I always like to say, it's always talking about how you helped, and then put it in concrete terms of like, how much value did you add? How did you solve a problem? How many opportunities did you capitalize on? And how did you improve the bottom line or enhance things? So the people that stand out the most are the ones that bring the most value to the table. That's what I tell people, and you need to own that. This is Dawn. I'm done.
Yeah, I find that a lot with the clients that I work with, that they are not really owning all the things that they've achieved. And I find it more with the female clients I work with, although my clients are kind of 50-50. But I've had men tell me that men they may think it, but they're not saying it. And oftentimes it's the female candidates, clients that I'm working with, who are very much concerned about, not feeling like they're bragging about themselves. And I always, point out to them, did you do this? Yes, I did it. Okay. Are these the facts? This is what you did? Yes. And these are the metrics? Yes. Okay. Then you got to own it. And so, that's how I always, position it with them, and try to sort of, you know, win them over to owning how awesome they really are. um any other suggestions on how to get people to really recognize the great things that they've done?
Annette, if I can
Yep.
jump in, I think that a lot of it is what a lot of candidates miss, I think, is talking about results, like you're saying here. They'll often describe things more in academic terms about, well, if that situation came up, here's what I would do instead of here's what I did do. And I really am a strong proponent of having a process to answer interview questions. I go with stars, and I said that with as a plural because there are a couple reasons. One, I think it's great to be able to develop great, compelling stories using that process. And what I think, regardless of whether you use stars or car or any or no process, the last S for me is, so why am I telling you this? And I think it's an opportunity for candidates to paint the picture of them in that role, to be able to tell the interviewer. And the reason why this example is important is because I know in this role you need somebody who can XYZ. And I think this example shows you that I'm that person that can do that for you. So I think it's about communicating results and then about showing how those results pertain to the job at hand. I'm checking out on that one. Thank you.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, just to piggyback what Ken was talking about. As a recruiter, I'm faced with typically two types of resume. One resume is where I have to spend a lot of time in discovery mode if I'm going to interview somebody. And sometimes that's the only type of resume I have where every bullet point sounds like a job function. So I have to spend time in discovery mode during a job interview. I have to try to discover where your successes are, how did you make impact, what are some of the contributions you did. Now, the other resume, which is the one that we all do for our clients, and that's why you always should get help and get a partner, is a resume that shows these success stories. I use a car, star, doesn't matter. It gets the same results. So when a resume is full of a lot of reverse car stories, I already know where your superpowers are, your successes are. So my question will be one or two steps above a discovery question. I'm going to ask, well, I see you accomplished this. Tell me about some of the obstacles you had. Tell me about your planning process. Tell me about how long it took you to do this. So I think the questions are a lot more in depth, and that creates a much better job interview. So that's why our resume writers, we are worth what we are worth, because we help our clients strategically write a successful resume. It's become simple as that, but you need a partner to do that. One of the reasons I got into this business, because the late 80s, I had a job through junior high, high school, college, and 2 years out of college. Then the company got purchased, and I was kicked to the side of the road. I had no idea what to do. I actually hired a resume writer in 1986, 87, and she was able to take my 7 years of experience and just write an amazing resume. And 30 years later, I'm doing it. I'm doing it for people. So I'm out.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is important to have somebody to work with, and it's kind of a struggle for people, I think, when they're even looking, as long as we're talking here and you mentioned that, um, some of the things that people need to look for when they're looking for someone, if they want to partner with a resume writer or a coach, is there are so many people out there. If you put in, resume writer on Google, you'll get, millions of listings. If you put it in on LinkedIn, you'll probably get, tens or of thousands of people. And there really is no way to just tell immediately, who is really someone who is qualified, someone who is a good fit for you. There some have certifications. What do those certifications mean? So what are some of the things, if we have a little time here, and please do come up from the audience, and if you have a question, please do come up. We are here, we can talk, we know each other, we can chit chat, you know for the rest of the hour, but we're really here to try to answer your questions, if we can, and help you in your job search. So what are some thoughts of how people can look at something? How do they judge, is this a good resume writer or coach or whatever, if they're looking, or even a recruiter, if they're looking for someone that they might be able to work with?
I'll start. So you mean how to connect with a qualified resume writer? Was
how
that your
how
question?
to if somebody goes on LinkedIn and they put in resume writer, and one of the people might come up would be me, and there's 10 other people or 50 other people that are right underneath. How do you, if you're a person just looking for some help, how do you know who to pick for a
Well,
resume
right
coach?
now we have Annette, Tom, Dawn, Mary, and Ken. You don't need to go any further, but if you want to, if you want to go further, you really should speak to the resume writer because it's a relationship. So you have to make sure they have your best interest in their focus, and that there's someone that you could communicate. And different resume writers have different processes. Some resume writers have you fill out a form, they never speak to you. Some people say, send me your resume back, a job posting, and send back a resume. I don't think those are effective methods. So there should be a coaching process through it. There should be collaboration. There should be editing process. You need to have a voice in your resume. So I think you really need to speak to the writer, see what the process is, and make sure it fits fits what you want. And then when we talk about pricing, I always use the philosophy, take a look at your target salary and set aside 1% to 2% of that target salary for good quality service and a partnership that can last for years. I've been doing this for 12 years. I think Dawn's about the same amount of time. I have some clients that have been with me for 10 years and they're on a third or fourth resume or job search or something. So it's not just a one and done type of relationship. It should be something that's long term.
Go ahead, John.
Great. Well, I agree with Tom, but anybody who's out looking for coaching services or resume writing services or LinkedIn profile help, you got to find someone who can walk the walk. Unfortunately, our industry, the resume writing industry in particular, has seen a surge of people that have suddenly just thrown out their shingle and said, "I'm a resume writer." They do a terrible job. They charge a cheap to moderate price, and it ends up hurting. The quality is just not there. It's just hurting the job seekers. So it's incumbent, if you're looking for those types of service providers, that you got to find someone who has a footprint out there. Are they writing blogs? Are they, what kind of subject matter expertise are they demonstrating? What kinds of things are they talking about? And do they have recommendations? And do they have their own social media footprint? If you're going to hire someone to write a LinkedIn profile, what does that person's profile look like? You got to walk the walk and talk the talk, as they like to say. So it just, it's in your own best interest, if you're going to make this kind of investment, to vet out people and then have that conversation like Tom said, because it's going to be a different fit with different people. So I know there's a certain personality type that I do not do well with. It's like a mind, like 1%, but I just know that's the wrong personality type, and as long as I'm upfront with that, then I'm capable of saying, I know somebody else who can help you. And so it does take a little time, but in a way, you're protecting your investment so you get the best possible service. This is Dawn. I'm done speaking.
Oh my goodness. I'm so glad you said that. I have to tell you, I occasionally, scouting around LinkedIn looking at profiles, and I find resume writers or LinkedIn coaches that don't have a background photo on their LinkedIn profile. And I think, okay, I hope if someone is considering hiring them, they recognize that, they're not doing something that you or I or anyone up on this stage would say you must have that background photo. So, it really is important to, check the person out. Again, I'm going to give another shout out. We have a couple people that joined us. If you have a question, if you're in a job search and you, would like to ask about whatever, we have resume writers, coaches, recruiters up here on stage, and we'd be happy to answer your questions. As we have people, in the audience, and we've been talking about how to work with a resume writer, how to choose someone. What are some things, Neri, if you could start, and then Tom, I know that, obviously you do recruiting too. What should somebody look for if they think they want to work with a recruiter, and what does the recruiter actually do for them? I mean, the recruiter's not finding them a job, right? So what should they look for, Mary?
Well, I mean, I think it's important to be clear about there's different kinds of recruiters. So, obviously there are recruiters that work for a company. They're employees of a company. So they're corporate recruiters, for example. There are other recruiters that, are third party, where they're maybe in an agency setting or they work in a search environment, agency kind of environment. So they, are working with multiple clients. I don't necessarily, I mean, I think it's important to know both kinds of recruiters for sure. Um, I would say that it's important as a job seeker, you need to know, yeah, I mean, just who you're talking to, like whose interests the recruiters are probably representing. I mean, I forget who had said it earlier, but I think it might have been Ken or someone. But you're the CEO, you are the boss of your own job search. I know that normally when people ask me for advice, I say that recruiters are just a strategy, one part of your overall strategy. So, I mean, you should be applying online to jobs and doing that sort of thing. You should be networking. You should be reaching out and doing the legwork and the homework. You should be building those relationships with your, mentors and other people in your industry, as well as recruiters. So, um, it's people often forget that, if you're working, say, with a third party recruiter, that if you're a job seeker, they're not necessarily representing your interests. Their objective is to satisfy the client, which is the company, and provide really healthy candidate slates that are of the top candidates possible. So, acknowledge that, and realize where their interest is. But I would say that it's important to know everybody when it comes to the corporate recruiters. I mean, I know specific to that, if you're interested in working at a particular company, reaching out to recruiters directly is always a good strategy, even though you may not necessarily know if they're the ones assigned to working that particular department. I think sometimes you can gather that intelligence by just looking, if they include it in their profile, or if you see things online about certain areas or events that they might be participating in, to get an idea, and then just reach out to them if they are in the area and that you'd like to be working in within that specific company. But I think Clubhouse is a great place to meet people for this very reason. If you're a job seeker, I know that there are tons of other rooms that, there are all sorts of people that are willing to help, that work at different organizations, and that you can connect. And even if they may not be the right person to get you directly to the answer, they can, help facilitate that. This is Marion, and done speaking.
Yeah, that's so true. I was just actually talking to Brenda Meller earlier today. We were talking about the idea of, if you have a recruiter contact you and it's a job that you're not interested in, one of the ways to start building up those relationships is think of, who else you might be able to to refer. And so I'm guessing that's something that that you would look for, Mary, in someone. If you contact someone and you pitch them a job and it's not right for them, that it could be right for someone else. And I mean, do you appreciate someone saying, that's not for me, but
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and for me, like, we don't get things done by ourselves. I mean, maybe there's one or two things, but we rely on interacting with other people. So even though I might not have an opportunity available for someone, or it's not the right fit right at the moment, I mean, I want to stay in touch with that person. And also, if they know of someone within their network that I might not know, like, I'd like to create a space in a relationship where, like, they're comfortable to refer or to ask more questions, and that it goes far beyond that initial one-time contact, that it's an actual ongoing kind of dialogue. So, but absolutely, Annette, I would love referrals all the time. So thank you.
No, that's great. So, we're getting sort of towards the end here. What's something that, we haven't discussed yet that that might be something helpful to people that are down in the audience up there, down in the audience here? Any suggestions, Dawn? I'm sure you have a suggestion. Nope. She might have stepped away.
Nope,
Oh,
I'm here. Sorry.
that's okay. No
Um,
worries.
you know, I think that, and I've had several clients lately that have been looking for work for quite a while, and it is depressing. But getting back to the original point of at the beginning of the whole discussion today is you have to have a positive attitude. I know that's easier said than done when you feel like you've had this crushing weight of all these different rejections or even lack of response. So, you just have to keep persevering and spin. It's all about networking. So you got to spin your web as big as you can and cast your net as far as wide as you can. Eventually, it'll snare something, and it goes back to who do you know and who do they know, and getting those in those referrals, and then also knowing what your value is. So it's you just got to stay on that course and don't get sideswiped or something. I mean, it's easier said than done, but you really need to focus on just keep slow and steady wins the race. That's a good way of thinking about it. This is Donna. I'm done speaking.
And it is true too. It's so much about the ongoing work and networking. I think everyone up here would agree with me that networking is such an important part of that, whether it's online networking on LinkedIn, which is my favorite place to network, or if it's industry events. There are always if you're in the industry, if you're in marketing, there's always events, local events. Right now, a lot of them are virtual, due to our circumstances. And it's also the job seeker groups. I know, I'm not sure what what you hear from the clients you work with, but I often hear people poo-pooing. I don't want to go to a job seeker group. Everybody there is unemployed too. How is that going to help me? But those types of groups can be a really great place to exchange leads because, a job that I'm not interested in, might be perfect for my friend Jill. So, what are your all thoughts about the idea of networking, on LinkedIn, in person?
Well, this is Tom speaking. I mean, networking is just as important as your resume. You have to have a strategy. You have to have a routine. Unfortunately, some clients that are not successful in their job search, they're kind of like do it 1 hour one day, 3 hours the next day, and they only spend 5, 6 hours on their job search, whether it's networking, applying for jobs. You have to be serious. So if you work 40 hours a week, your job search maybe should be 35 hours. You'll get a routine, get up the same day, have a plan, keep track of what you do, make a list of people you should get to know at your target companies. We kind of do the job search backwards. We wait for a job posting to appear, and then we try to claw into that job with 200 other applicants. Have a list of target companies and start working those companies and getting relationships. And sometimes the right conversation can actually lead to a job opportunity, and a job hasn't even been written or posted yet. So we need to have a kind of a multi-pronged approach to our job search. I'm Tom and done.
Yeah, I so agree with you. So this is the last call for anyone in the audience. If you have a question, please come up now because I'm about to turn off the hand raising in one hot second here. So this is the last call for that. And excuse me. So okay, so we have someone. I'm trying to bring you up right now. Oh, okay, cool. So Nicole, thank you for joining us. I assume you popped because you have a question.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, my name is Nicole. I don't necessarily have a question as much as a statement that I just want to say thank you very much for providing this platform. I basically just want to sit in and have an opportunity to listen to recruiters, hiring managers, and those in those capacities to learn from the industry level how the machinations are working as far as helping people find jobs from the various aspects of what was spoken here, to which I do agree with, particularly from the standpoint of a job seeker, and that's where I am right now personally, um, doing the work that is necessary to, among other things, increase one's online presence, tightening one's resume, as well as doing the other networking activities that's necessary to better position myself to get hired. So that's what I wanted to provide as far as that goes. So once again, just want to say thank you for providing the information that was presented this afternoon. And I'm done speaking.
Well, thank you so much for coming up. We appreciate that. It's always nice to hear that what we're sharing is helpful. So what's been working for you?
Well, at this particular point, I've not landed anything else as of late. So just very briefly, I worked as an administrator for about 20 years across 3 industries, with the latest job that I had having gone immediately from in office to a strictly remote role due to the pandemic. And then within 15 months' time, and then 3 months following that, it went into a hybrid role. So at this particular time, because of personal life circumstances, I am now looking for a strictly remote role. So as far as what has been working for me, um, it's basically using platforms, the newer platforms such as Clubhouse, to do the necessary work to find out who among the audience across the app happens to have my best interest, excuse me, that happens to have my share my interest, as far as industry, as far as particular um, areas of work as a virtual administrator, and that's primarily what I'm looking into. Um, and just taking tips and implementing them where needed, so that as I continue to apply for additional work, that I'm able to increase the amount of responses that I'm getting from companies and their hiring managers and recruiters.
Well, great. Thank you so much for sharing that. So we're just about to say goodbye now. So why don't we just go around the stage? And Tom, why don't you start? And Tom, Dawn, Mary, and Ken, just tell us a little bit about what you do and where can people find you? And are you open to connecting on LinkedIn?
Well, definitely LinkedIn's the place to find me. That's where I spend the majority of my time. So I'm always open to add to my connections, and I'm always will offer a free resume or LinkedIn review. As far as what I'm doing, I'm just getting caught up with the backlog of our resume writing clients and LinkedIn profile clients. I got a team of 6 writers, and then I'm also really boggled down with the recruiting side of my business. So it's just been catching up with the backlog. But I have a lot of things planned for the second, third, and fourth quarter this year.
Cool. What about you, Dawn?
Well, I'm a resume writer and I speak a lot on topics that are related to careers. You can find me on pretty much every single social media platform, so I'm open to connecting.
Great. Mary?
Yeah, well, by profession, I'm a recruiter. So I have my own recruiting business. I pretty much make my living farming myself out as a consultant to different clients. I'm actually finishing up this week with a client I've worked with for the last few years, Accenture, and then in a few weeks I'll be starting um, working with a new client, their competitor actually, which is Deloitte. So, happy to connect on LinkedIn. And, if you work in the tech or digital space, I'm happy to connect. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, Dawn probably had to run off for a client call. And Ken, are you open to connecting with people on LinkedIn? And what are you up to?
Absolutely. I'd love to connect with people on LinkedIn. I'm Ken Sher. I'm a career coach and executive coach. And I base a lot of my coaching, by the way, on the fact that I was with Johnson & Johnson for 25 years before being laid off and going through a little bit of what Tom was talking about earlier of figuring out what the heck is going on in this job market. But love to connect with people. And I also have a Clubhouse show on Tuesday evenings at 6 o'clock. And I have an awesome person on with me on this coming Tuesday by the name of Annette Richmond. So hopefully people will join us then. Thank you very much. I'm done.
Oh, thank you for the plug, Ken. It'll be so much fun joining you. So I'm Annette Richmond, and if you've gotten some good information here today, please do follow these awesome speakers on the stage with me and follow the club. We are here every Thursday from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern. So thank you so much to everyone who's been here. We've had a few people that have been here with us the entire hour, and just time to say goodbye and have a great rest of your day.